Welcome to another exciting episode of Bringing Jesus Back into Focus. I'm Christopher John Joseph in Australia, and I was born into the Jewish Catholic Christian Church in 1957. I left when I was 16 or 17 because they were teaching a lie to us. They were saying that the Jewish God Yahweh is the exact same divine presence of love and life force that Jesus was at one with. And I said, no, it's not. There are two Yahwehs there to start with. There are two gods, not one. Can't you see that in the Jewish religion? There's a God of love and a war god. The same as the way the Romans had their filthy Mars, war god, and the Egyptians had Sekhmet, and the Greeks had Ares. They were all filthy, stinking, murdering, genocidal war gods. And the Jews had their war god too, the same stinking, filthy war god called Yahweh. But you've got to say Yahweh one. And that's simply because the Jews are deceptive, dishonest, deceiving. The Romans were honest, and the Greeks and the Egyptians were honest. They had a different temple for their God of love, a different name. Pax, the God of love, peace. Irene, the Greek god of love, peace. The Egyptians had another god and another temple where you went to that temple to calm you down. Now, don't go to war and kill. Be more calm. Just calm down. Make friends with them. A different god, different life force. You become a different child. You see, a different identity. If you're the child of Pax, you can't be the child of Mars. If you're the child of Yahweh, stinking war god one, who murders and slaughters everyone at Jericho, you can't be the same child of Yahweh two, who says if a foreigner is amongst you in Leviticus, treat them as if they're Jewish and love them like you would a Jew. Love them as yourself. There's the loving God saying, treat foreigners as if they're Jewish. You don't hurt other Jewish children, well, don't hurt them. That's the God of love. Jesus saw that quite clearly. He saw the problem. He said, you're worshipping a satanic war god. He said that to them, you're children of Satan. And you do the murder and filthy things of Satan because you're Satan's children. He said that to the Jews. So why they didn't kill him right then on the spot? They killed him later on, of course, because he was blaspheming their two-headed war god, and it's a two-headed god. Yahweh has one body, sure, monotheistic body, sure, I agree with that, monotheistic body, two heads, opposite names, opposite heads. That's the way they should have done it, two different gods, two different names. So I'm here to just clarify that as a Christian, because I'm not a Jewish Christian. I never have been. And so I had to actually retranslate the Gospels. This is the second edition of the Gospels of Jesus Unplugged. Now, this is wonderful for Jewish Christians who don't want to be Jewish anymore, don't want to worship Yahweh anymore, and you've already left the Jewish Christian church. I've met a lot of Christians who have left the Jewish Christian churches because of the Jewish religion poisoning our religion. And it is poisoned because they have a stinking, filthy war god that they worship. Well, we're not supposed to worship that sort of stinking, filthy war god. Jesus said, love your enemies. He said this divine presence in the heavenly spiritual universe and spiritual world, which is a different dimension. That's why you've got a spiritual body with you now to leave in, providing it's alive and awake and filled with love. But you have to get into it now before your body of flesh dies, returns to the earth. But Jesus is saying this divine loving creator is only love. There isn't anything else about this divine loving creator. The entire mind of this loving creator is love. So we don't worship any other God or any other divine source of life that's spiritual and loving. We don't suddenly change and, we'll worship this war god and go and kill some people as well. That's duality. Jesus said if you're divided within yourself, you're filled with darkness. If your eye is single and your mind is filled with love, your whole body will be filled with light. Now that's the enlightenment that he and also Buddha underwent and achieved. And good on them. And their teachings are beautiful. So I'm a pacifist Christian. So we're hated amongst all the Christians. We're the most hated. Because we won't join the army or navy no matter who's attacking Australia. I'm not joining. I'm not killing the Nazis who invade. Whether they're the Russian Nazis, the Japanese Nazis, the German Nazis, the Jewish Nazis, the Hamas Nazis, the Iran Nazis. I'm not killing any of them because they're going to die anyway. I'm a child of heaven on earth, following Jesus to get there. That's who I am. There's no violence in heaven. You can't get into heaven if you're violent. Heaven's eternal. This place is just a short term, little bit of time. 100 years if you're lucky. Invest in what's eternal. Love. So this is the book, the Gospels of Jesus Unplugged. I'll read the back. Jesus taught we can all experience an inner spiritual awakening if we search for it. He called this the treasure hidden in the field of earth or flesh. This is our eternal spiritual identity, empowered only by the loving spiritual life force of our loving spiritual Creator. Our bodies of flesh are only temporary and empowered by earthly things, and all flesh dies. Only our spiritual body and soul mind of love lives on to come into the presence of our loving Creator to reap as we have sown. His teachings and spiritual way of love and non-violence can help awaken us all into a new spiritual life here on earth, leading us to the heavenly spiritual world of love after death. Jesus taught we all have two different bodies with us in one, and he said that the spiritual body, being eternal, is the most important to be healthy and well in spirit. He provides us with the spiritual instructions to follow and become at one with, to be awakened and transformed into spiritual children of light of our loving spiritual Creator in heaven. We then help awaken other children to become spiritual and bring peace and heavenly love to earth for all in need. These translations of the Gospels of Jesus remove the Jewish overlays and distortions placed over the universal teachings of Jesus and spiritual way of non-violence and love. Our mortal minds change from being dualistic into singular minds, viewing all things through the eye of love. Jesus said, if your eye is single, you will be filled with light, but if dualistic and divided, you will be filled with darkness. Jesus said not to mix his new spiritual way of understanding our loving Creator with the Old Testament dualistic God of the Jews, or you will lose the understanding of the one true loving spiritual Creator of our spiritual lives, and not realize who you really are as the spiritual children of only love on earth. These Gospels help focus his message of the loving way to reach the heavenly spiritual world from earth. Now, I've really enjoyed doing this. It's just been fantastic. I just can't tell you how much I love defending him, the loving Creator. I never thought I'd have to defend Jesus from slander, and the loving Creator, but I do. I just didn't realize I was still doing it so badly. So rip out the book of Revelation and burn it. Absolutely. That's the most filthy, slanderous book about Jesus that anyone I've ever known has written about him. An atheist couldn't write anything more slanderous than that book. Rip it out. That's the book of Daniel. It's a Jewish book. Get it out of there. It's stinking up the church and it's stinking up the Gospels. Cut the Bible in two and put the Jewish religion on the shelf. It's a different religion. They've got a two-headed God. They're worshipping two gods as one. That's their problem. Schizophrenic. Stay with Jesus' words and you can get to heaven. He'll transform you. They're the contents of the book, and we're up to Matthew now. We're just reading those, so I'm putting them all on the internet, on the web, on YouTube. And so if you're interested in something a little bit more refreshing, a little bit more truthful, a little bit more spiritually minded on love and non-violence, and with a good translation of the Greek interlinear original Gospels that remove all the rubbish, as I'm a bit like John the Baptist, I'm making straight the way of the Lord. These curving, winding curves of satanic snake stuff that's been poisoning the religion for so long. I've gotten rid of that. He's about love and non-violence. If you want to know him, you better become that. I've known him that way my whole life, so I haven't been poisoned by the Jewish influence of their war god at all. The book of Revelation, I read that when I was about 20 or 21. I thought, oh, what a load of rubbish. It's got nothing to do with him at all. So anyway, here we go. Work is in the vineyard we're up to. And this is, I think, Matthew, I think it's part 8, I think. Anyway, it'll be on the front title, 8 or 9, I can't remember. Matthew 21:16. Jesus said, for the heavenly spiritual world, this is workers in the vineyard. For the heavenly spiritual world is like a man who is the head of the family, who went out early in the morning to hire labourers for his vineyard. Now, when he had agreed with the labourers to be paid a denarius a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And he went out about the third hour and saw others standing idle in the marketplace and said to them, you also go into the vineyard, and whatever is just, I will pay you. So they went. Again he went out about the 6th and 9th hour and did likewise. And about the 11th hour he went out and found others standing idle and said to them, why have you been standing here idle all day? They said to him, because no one hired us. He said to them, you also go into the vineyard, and whatever is just, you will receive. So when evening had come, the owner of the vineyard said to the steward, call the labourers and give them their wages, beginning with the last to the first. And when those came who were hired about the 11th hour, they each received a denarius. But when the first came, they supposed that they would receive more. but they also received a denarius. And when they had received it, they complained against the landowner, saying, 'These last ones have worked only 1 hour, and you made them equal to us who have borne the greater burden and heat of the day.' But he answered, saying, 'Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what is yours and go your way. I wish to give to this last man the same as to you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with my own things? Or is your eye malicious, because I am good? So the last will be first, and the first will be last. For many are called, but few are chosen.'" Author: Jesus teaches we can all become spiritual children of our loving spiritual Creator in heaven at any stage of our life on earth. At any time, no matter how old you are, no matter how many bad things you've done, you can still become a spiritual child by changing your ways, of course. And once we are committed to being spiritual and begin to bring the loving spiritual life force of our spiritual Creator in heaven to all children in need, we are all equally her children, regardless of the earthly time spent as one. It's not about how long you've been a spiritual child of heaven on earth. It's about become a spiritual child on earth, because that's the ultimate goal. And once you've reached it, you're there. You've made it home. Her children, regardless of the earthly time spent as one. So that we become absolutely equal, regardless of the time, simply because you've become spiritual now. That's your primary identity. Once you're in your primary identity, you're in it. And because heaven's eternal, you're the same as this other kid next to you he was always spiritually enlightened for the last 40 years. You're a latecomer, but you are now equally spiritually filled with love and non-violence, just as he is. So you are, or she is. So you are all spiritual children equally of love and non-violence, you see. It's not about time, it's about becoming. If it takes you longer, well, okay, as long as you become, that's all that matters. And then you're equal. The one denarius for all represents this truth, along with the saying of Jesus about the last being equal to the first, and the first being equal to the last, to convey this spiritual truth that we are all equally loved by our loving spiritual Creator. Once we become spiritual, you're spiritual. That's it. You're not flesh anymore and blood and bones duality. We just have to spend a bit of time in that until we leave. He also points out the fault of how some spiritual children fall into the trap of feeling superior to others due to the amount of their works being greater, when it is the love flowing through us from heaven to others that is all that really matters, as that is our true heavenly reward while here on earth. The love is love, and it has no quantity attached to it, as it is one and complete and flows in an unending supply to all who wish to receive and share it. See, he's pointing out here, because he knew that some children who were quite spiritually awakened, they could fall into the trap of counting their works, or look at all the great works I've done spiritually, and they can start to move into arrogance a little bit, shifting out of their natural childlike spiritual identity of just enjoying doing it, just enjoying playing with this love and helping children. And someone else comes along and they've just started, and instead of greeting them and go, "Oh, you're doing it too? Oh, great, you just come, have you? Oh, I'll show you how I'm doing it." And you share it. You don't count. You don't say, "Oh, I've done a lot more than you." You see, you've slipped into a false identity. So Jesus was well aware of the traps all the time. He was so beautiful in his wisdom. Jesus predicts his death. Matthew 20:17-19. As Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 disciples aside and he began to tell them what will happen to him. He said, "Behold, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the child of humanity will be delivered to the chief priests and scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him to the Gentiles, who will mock him, spit on him, scourge him, and will kill him, and then he will rise again." The disciples understood none of these things Jesus was saying, and could not grasp or understand what was said. Even though they were with him, they still couldn't easily catch on to this new understanding, because they were brainwashed into the Jewish, two-headed God Yahweh religion. It's hard to get out of that once you're brainwashed from a child. Author: Even after listening for a few years to Jesus teach about the new spiritual understanding that we all have two different bodies with us, one of flesh that dies and one of spirit that rises from death and lives on, they still had no real concept of this spiritual truth, or that Jesus was going to allow his body of flesh to be killed so that he could appear briefly to them only in his spiritual body to demonstrate this ultimate spiritual truth before he went to heaven. So he was warning them, look, they're going to kill me, but I'll rise again though, but I'll be in a spiritual body. They couldn't comprehend that. They had no idea. What's a spiritual body? What's that? To serve is greatest. Beautiful. Matthew 20:25-28. Jesus called the disciples together and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles have lordship over them, and their greater men have authority over them. But it shall not be this way among you. For whoever desires to become great among you must be your assistant and servant. And whoever would be first among you must dedicate their whole life to you. Just as the spiritual child of humanity came not to be served by others, but to serve, and dedicate his life to free children from being captured by ignorance and sin, through giving his words to them that act like a ransom to free them from the bondage of sin by awakening their spiritual life." Author. Jesus teaches selflessness, which we need for the loving spiritual life force to flow easily through us to all children in need. To serve others in need is to be at one with that love within you, which links you to heaven and sustains your spiritual body, soul, and life. We can dedicate our life in this way to whatever degree our circumstances permit. Jesus gave up his career as a carpenter to teach these spiritual truths, to awaken our spiritual life once he found his, and guide us all home to heaven. To serve others is a joy. You're selfless. You can't be egotistical if you're serving someone else in need. It's really a wonderful feeling to be selfless. You feel light. There's no ego present. If you're caring for your elderly parent or your little child who's sick, you're concentrating on them. You're caring about them. You're loving them. You're caring for them. You forget about your own worries and troubles or whatever. There it is, you see, the lightness of being. You're moving into your spirit then, just thinking about the other. You're filled with love for the other. That's becoming really spiritual. More spiritual than flesh and blood. Oh, gee, I wish I could go and play golf. I wish I didn't have to care for you. Oh, I wanted to go to the movies. Oh, I wanted to do this. Oh, gee, I have to care for you. You're in the flesh, you see. You're still primarily flesh. Sensations of the flesh. No, being selfless is a really beautiful experience, but it's heavenly, so it's subtle, you see. So you need to practice to really feel that incredible peace and undisturbed quality of your mind when you're serving someone else out of love. You're undisturbed. Even though the person may be ill or suffering, which can be quite disturbing if you're the carer for them. That's another matter. But the selflessness is the way you bring love to the other. If you're selfish, love can't flow out of you, can it? It's pretty obvious. Jesus enters Jerusalem, Matthew 21:8-11. And many heard in the city that Jesus was approaching, so they went and spread their garments on the road in front of him, and others cut down branches and spread them also on the road to honour him. And when they saw him arriving, knowing all about the mighty works he had done in the name of our loving spiritual Creator, they cried out, "Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of our loving Creator. Peace in heaven, Hosanna in the highest." And the whole city was stirred up, asking who he was. And they were told, "It is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth of Galilee." And the Pharisees, seeing this, said to each other, "Look, we are accomplishing nothing. The world is following after him." So some of the Pharisees, upset by this, said to Jesus, "Master, rebuke your followers." He answered them, saying, "I tell you, if they were all silent, these stones would cry out. Have you not read, out of the mouths of children and nursing babies you have perfect praise?" Author. Things were getting more dangerous for Jesus as many Jews were beginning to follow his understanding of our loving spiritual creator who is only love, and were leaving the two-headed God Yahweh that the Pharisees were teaching about. He was undermining the old God of the Jews, and the Pharisees wanted to get rid of him. He was a threat to their power base, the distorted two-headed God Yahweh. Jesus cleanses temple, Matthew 21:12-17. Jesus entered the temple of Yahweh, the two-headed God of the Jews, and drove out all those who sold and bought goods in the temple, and he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons, sheep, and oxen. And he drove all the animals out too, and would not allow anyone to carry goods through the temple. And he said, "My house shall be a house of spiritual prayer, says the loving Creator, but you have gone and made it a den of thieves." And the Jews asked him, "What sign will you show us that gives you the right to do these things?" Jesus answered, "Destroy this temple, and I will raise it up again." Then the Jews said, "It has taken 46 years to build this temple, and you will raise it up again by yourself?" But Jesus was speaking about the death of his body of flesh and being raised up again in his spiritual body after death. And the blind and lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them. But when the chief priests and the scribes saw the wonderful works he did, and the children crying out, "Hosanna to the spiritual child of our loving Creator," they were angry and said to him, "Do you hear what these children are saying?" And Jesus said, "Out of the mouths of little children and babes you have brought perfect praise." And the scribes and the chief priests talked about how they could destroy him, for they feared him, because all the people were amazed and enthralled by his teachings. And then leaving, he went and sought lodging in Bethany. Author: Jesus would have known about the slaughter at Jericho, incited by the Yahweh One, war god of the Jews, that they worshipped and followed, who instructed them to commit genocide and go and kill every man, woman, and innocent child in Jericho, and steal all their gold, silver, and brass to bring back and place in the temple of the two-headed God Yahweh, and steal their land. This is exactly the sort of thing Jesus was referring to when he said rightly, "You have turned this spiritual temple into a den of thieves." He understood they were murdering and killing, stealing land, stealing other people's treasures, and bringing them back to this temple. It's not a spiritual temple anymore, it's a war god's temple, and the spoils of war, mammon, are taken back to the spiritual temple of Yahweh 1 and 2. There are two gods in that temple. Only one of them is spiritual. The other's a war god. So Jesus just saw the obvious hypocrisy of this, and he told them openly that they're worshipping a satanic war god. Jesus' question, Matthew 21:23-27. One day when Jesus entered the temple, the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders came to him and asked him, "By what authority are you doing these things, and who gave you this authority?" Jesus answered, "I will also ask you a question, and if you give me an answer, then I will tell you by what authority I do these things. Was the baptism of John from heaven or men?" They discussed this with each other, saying, "If we say it was from heaven, he will say, 'Why then didn't you believe him?' If we say it was from men, all the people will be against us, for they believe John was a prophet." So they answered him, "We do not know." Jesus then said, "Well, neither will I let you know by what authority I do these things." He was very, very clever, very wise, Jesus, because he knew any time he blasphemed their questions, their tricky questions, they could kill him, stone him to death for blasphemy. So he had to be very clever and very cautious and wise in the way he answered. So he got out of this one by a very beautiful way of asking them about John, John the Baptist, and they couldn't give an answer. So he said, "Well, I'm not going to tell you either," because if he just said, "Oh, well, I'm doing these things because God, the loving Creator, has shown me to do these things because I'm a child," then they could have killed him for blasphemy. Author: Jesus had great spiritual insight and wisdom as a living spiritual child of heaven on earth, and was able to deal with such attacks and traps in a very clever way that prevented them from stoning him to death for committing blasphemy with his answers. The two sons parable, Matthew 21:28. Jesus said, "What do you think? A man had two sons, and he said to the first one, 'Son, go and work in the vineyard today.' And he answered, 'I will not.' But afterwards he regretted his answer and changed his mind and went. Then he went to the second son and said the same. And he answered, I will go, sir, but he did not. Which of these two sons did the will of his father? They said, the first one. Jesus said to them, truly I say to you, the tax collectors and prostitutes enter the kingdom of the heavenly spiritual world before you. For John came to you in the way of virtue and moral decency, and you would not believe him. But the tax collectors and prostitutes believed him, and even when you saw this, still you did not change your mind and believe him. Author. The first son represents those who are lost in sin, but then change their ways and become spiritual. So the first son says, I'm not going to follow the spiritual way, but then changes his mind and he becomes spiritual. The second one says, oh sure, I'll be spiritual, but then couldn't be bothered. The second son represents the Jews who do not follow Jesus to become children of our loving Creator, but remain worshipping their two-headed God Yahweh. It's pretty much directed at the Jews. What can you say? They didn't follow him out of their dualistic two-headed God religion. That's a pity. Wicked tenants parable. Matthew 21:33-46. Jesus said, there was a certain householder who planted a vineyard and set a hedge around it and dug a pit for the winepress and built a tower and let it out to tenants to farm. He then went away to another country. When the season of the fruit harvest drew near, he sent a servant to the tenants to collect his portion of the fruit. But they seized him and beat him and sent him away empty-handed. Again he sent them another servant, and they threw stones at him, wounding him in the head, and treated him shamefully. So he sent another, and they killed him, and likewise with others he sent. Some were beaten, and some killed. So the owner decided to send his son, saying, they will respect my son. But when the tenants saw the son, they said among themselves, this is the heir, come, let us kill him and claim his inheritance for our own. So they killed the son and cast him out of the vineyard. What do you think the owner of the vineyard will do? They replied, he will come and cast those tenants out of the vineyard and give it to others to bring forth fruit. Jesus said, have you not read this scripture? The very stone which the builders rejected has become the head and primary cornerstone. This is our loving Creator's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. So our loving Creator's heavenly spiritual kingdom will be taken away from you and given to others to bring forth the fruit. And anyone who comes against this stone, he is the cornerstone. Jesus is saying, I'm the new understanding of spirituality and heaven and the way to get to heaven. I'm the new cornerstone. A cornerstone is the first stone laid, which sets up the entire building structure, the alignment of it, the position of it. It's the cornerstone. The first cornerstone is the beginning of the entire structure. So it's all built around the cornerstone. The new understanding of the loving spiritual world of love and the spiritual Creator of divine love and the spiritual universe and spiritual world there and the children there with spiritual bodies right now while I'm talking to you. We all have a spiritual body to go therein. It's only empowered by love. Jesus said, I'll show you the way. I understand this now. You don't. I'm the new cornerstone. So they reject it. So then he says this, and anyone who comes against this stone, me, his false identity covering his spirit will be broken to pieces. And on whomever this stone rests, it will winnow them of their sins and reveal their true spiritual identity. Now you won't find that translation in any of the Jewish Christian Gospels in the world. You'll only find it here in mine. I'll repeat it. And anyone who comes against this stone, his false identity covering his spirit will be broken to pieces. And on whoever this stone rests, it will winnow them of their sins and reveal their true spiritual identity. Now in all the Jewish Christian Gospels of the world, what it says is, anyone who falls upon this stone will be broken to pieces, and whomever this stone falls upon will be crushed to powder. What a shocking translation of the Greek and the intention of Jesus' words, mostly the intention. I've asked Christians, what do you think that means? Anyone who falls against this stone is going to be broken, smashed to pieces, and whoever this stone falls upon is going to be crushed. And when I've asked Christians about that, Jewish Christians, not Christians, these are Jewish Christians, they're brainwashed by the Jewish religion. And they say, oh, Jesus and God are going to smash, all the bad people to pieces and crush them to death. But no, it's quite the opposite. And the Greek word fall in the Greek interlinear can also mean to alight upon, to rest upon. So if Jesus comes and if he's the cornerstone and he comes into your life, he'll winnow you of your sins. And the Greek word they use for crush, that comes from the olden days when they used to have to beat the grains of wheat that were surrounded by a husk. The husk is useless. So they beat the grains of wheat that are captured in the husk after they harvest the grains of wheat, on like a blanket, you might say. And then they throw it up in the air and the wind blows the useless chaff away and it winnows the seed and it gets rid of all the useless chaff. Jesus will get rid of all the bad dirt inside your cup. If you let him come into your life, he'll help you clean the inside of your cup out. So you become an awakened spiritual child and he'll save you to heaven. That's what it really means. And yet they translate it as if it's the war god, Yahweh One. It's disgusting. Author. Jesus is talking about all the good prophets who were leading the Jews towards only a loving God being rejected and killed by them throughout time. The servant wounded in the head could be a reference to John the Baptist, whom they rejected and was beheaded. Jesus was an awakened spiritual child of a loving spiritual creator in heaven, and he was bringing a new understanding about a loving creator who is only love to the Jews. This would destroy the two-headed God Yahweh that they worshipped and was their power base. So they also killed him, a true spiritual child of our loving creator, to keep and protect their distorted understanding of God. This correct translation concerning the cornerstone is perverted in nearly all the Gospels of the world, which translated this way: everyone who falls upon this stone will be broken to pieces, but whomever this stone falls on, it will crush him. Because of this distorted translation, many followers of Jesus are wrongly taught this means Jesus and our loving spiritual creator are going to destroy and kill anyone who stands against them. That refers to Yahweh One, the war god of the Jews, not Jesus and our loving creator who only love us even if we are lost in sin. So I'll leave it there because that's such an obvious bad translation, deliberately done, and the Jewish Christians hold on to it because that way they can link you back to the Jewish thinking war god, Yahweh One, not the Yahweh God of love. That's a much more beautiful God. Yahweh One's a beautiful God of love. Yahweh Two, sorry. You can, either way, the only thing you can do is say Yahweh One, Yahweh Two. A, B, whatever you want to say. You can't, because the Jews are dishonest and they won't call their loving God by a different name, you've got no other option but to say Yahweh One's a stinking, filthy war god, a murderer, and Yahweh Two is a loving God, a different God. They're different gods. It's just obvious. But the Jewish Christians want you to still think that they're both the same, like the Jews want you to think that. But I don't think that. I never have thought that because that's a lie. Why would I think something that makes no sense, illogical, unintelligent, just ridiculous, obvious, contradictory, schizophrenic? Why would I want to be involved in that when I can be at one with love through Jesus? And Buddha taught this too. My mind can just be love. That's what I want to be. That's who I want to be. So that's why my translations are different, because I'm not a Jewish Christian. I didn't realise how rare that was. That's okay. Jewish Christians don't like me. I imagine the Jews won't like me either, telling them that they worship two gods. Oh, you mustn't say that. We only worship one God. Oh, really? Can you explain the extreme schizophrenic differences between your one God? Not really, they say. So anyway, there we go. Well, I think that was either Mark part 8 or 9. I can't remember what we're up to, but it was one of the parts. It'll be on the beginning of the YouTube title. So again, I'm translating the Gospels for Jewish Christian children from the book, which is now published. It's March 2026, and it's now available worldwide, but you have to get the second edition, so it has a different cover. And the first edition is much more simple. I don't have any commentary in it. And that's a good one for Jewish Christians who are a little bit frightened by the truth of the two-headed God Yahweh. I don't mention that at all much in that book, only at the beginning, I think, just briefly. But the Gospels are just the Gospels. So if you want a safer, better translation, get the first edition, which is still available through Arkhouse Publications. But this is one that I'm publishing, and through the Earth Spirit sort of connection I have on the label there. So as always, I'll leave you with this very important instruction. Love your way to heaven, or hate your way to hell. The choice is yours. Please choose love. Bring more love into this planet right now. The satanic children are taking over. They're poisoning more children to join armies and murder and kill more children. Satan's army is growing. Hamas, Israel, America, Ukraine, Russia, Iran, the armaments industry supplying guns to all these, and bombs and drones. This is all satanic. The whole lot of it's Satan's armies. They all have S written on them, on their foreheads. They don't know it. But they are. They're all satanic. None of them are spiritual children, because we can't hurt anyone. And that's the difference between spiritual children of the loving spiritual creator who follow Jesus and all other children in the world. But anyone can be a spiritual child because you've got a spiritual body with you right now. The same as Jesus, same as Buddha. And I'm trying to myself to grow stronger in spirit and love and non-violence, despite all the opposition. And some persecution. I've already been condemned by one Jewish Christian. I don't believe the blood of Jesus saves me. And that's because 17 times in the Gospels Jesus says, it's my words that save you. 17 times. You won't find him saying that 17 times about his blood. But they don't read his words, these Jewish Christians. They love the old Jewish religion. That's why they're Jewish and Christian. Okay, on to the next part. Bye for now.